Hello and a very warm welcome to Insight. I'm Amandra Bhatt. In a bid to transform the urban landscape of the country to make cities more livable, the Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, recently approved central government spending of about 1 lakh crore on urban development under 2 new urban missions over the next 5 years. The Cabinet has cleared the Smart Cities mission last week and allocated 48,000 crore rupees for the same. Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation of 500 cities with an outlay of 50,000 crore rupees has also been approved. The two missions combined are expected to improve the quality of life, create sustainable cities and drive economic growth. The Prime Minister, remember, had announced his vision to set up 100 smart cities across the country soon after coming to power almost a year ago. Since then, there's been a race among cities to qualify for the government's eligibility list. Today in Insight, we discuss the concept of a smart city, how it will reshape the country's urban landscape and the roadblocks ahead. And to discuss the same, we are joined in our studios by a distinguished panel of guests. Please welcome Professor K.T. Ravindran. He's a former chairman of the Delhi Urban Art Commission. Welcome to Insight, Professor Ravindran. Sitting next to him is Hemant Bishnoi. He's a senior journalist. Welcome to Insight, Mr. Bishnoi. Sitting next to him is Professor Kavas Kapadia. He's a former dean of the School of Planning and Architecture. He was also heading the urban planning department there. Welcome to Insight, Professor Kapadia. And we're also joined by Dr. Amitabh Kundu, a professor in the Institute for Human Development. Welcome to Insight, Dr. Kundu. I'll begin the discussion with Professor Ravindran. Professor Ravindran, let's begin with the concept of a smart city. What exactly is a smart city? We've heard mega city, world city, millennium city, and so on, but there's not much clarity as to what really would be a smart city.
Well, all over the world, there still is no clarity as to what is a smart city. It simply means cities which will function by application of smart systems, which includes, of course, very obviously understood is the electronic systems. And secondly, the governance structure of a smart city will be such that it will be responsive to people's needs, and people will have the opportunity to respond back to the government on the service delivery that the government gives by using smart systems. Apart from this, it is also understood that a smart city will be a sustainable city in its essence, in the sense that it will try to overcome those difficulties which we have accrued through the industrialization process of cities and the environmental issues which have been thrown up by those. So, by using new technology, there will be ways and means by which they can circumvent the ill effects of industrialization in cities, and therefore it will smarten the city to the point that it will become more sustainable.
Okay.
So, these are three main pillars of a smart city. One is that it has highly enabled, technology-enabled communication. It has a governance structure which is able to be responsive to people's requirement. And thirdly, it will be a city which is sustainable in its essence.
All right, so it goes just beyond IT and technology.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bishnoi, what do you have to say about the concept of a smart city that the government is planning to come up with 100 smart cities across the country?
मुझे लगता है कि शहरों की आबादी तो निश्चित तौर पर बढ़ रही है। गांवों में जो खेतों पर दबाव है वो आबादी बढ़ने से बड़ा है और उसमें से बहुत सारी आबादी शहरों में आ रही है। और उस आबादी के आने से आज़ादी के बाद भी सभी शहरों में जो आबादी है वो बढ़ी है, लेकिन उनके रहने सहने की ठीक से व्यवस्था अभी तक नहीं हो पाई है। कई जगह पर प्रयास भी हुआ, अब जैसे दिल्ली के नज़दीक गुड़गांव बसा, लेकिन गुड़गांव में भी आप देखिए कि बहुत अच्छे मकान बन गए, बहुत अच्छी सड़कें बन गई, उसके बावजूद भी बरसात के पानी के डिस्पोजल का यातायात कितना हो जाएगा इसकी शायद कल्पना नहीं की गई थी, इसलिए वहाँ पर रोज ट्रैफिक जैम लगते हैं। तो इस तरह के जो शहर बस रहे हैं उससे जनता को मुक्ति दिलाना ये तो आवश्यक हो गया है। अब स्मार्ट सिटी बनने का कॉन्सेप्ट ये है कि जहाँ पर भी शहर बने वो एक छोटा सा बने, और छोटा सा उसके साथ बड़े शहरों के साथ उसकी ट्रांसपोर्ट व्यवस्था अच्छी हो। इस तरह के कॉन्सेप्ट को लेकर, जिसमें पानी की व्यवस्था, बिजली की व्यवस्था, सफाई की व्यवस्था, इन सब व्यवस्थाओं पर पूरा ध्यान दिया जा सके। अब दिल्ली जैसे बड़े शहर में, इतना बड़ा शहर हो गया है ये 25 किलोमीटर बाई 25 किलोमीटर का, कि इसमें जितना रोज का कूड़ा निकलता है उस कूड़े को फेंकने के लिए जगह भी मिलना मुश्किल होती जा रही है। तो इस तरह के स्मार्ट सिटीज के कारण इस तरह के शहरों पर दबाव कम होगा, और उस दबाव के कारण एक अच्छे सुव्यवस्थित ढंग से लोग रह पाएंगे।
Okay, but Professor Kapadia, what gave rise to this need for a smart city in the first place?
Well, it so happens that every now and then the people in power, they get an idea to get things right. And as Ravindran said in the beginning, that this is an attempt to set the problems that we have been accruing over a period of hundreds of years right. And here the imagination is, कल्पना की बात है कि एक स्मार्ट सिटी ऐसी बनेगी कि which will be neat and clean, which will be efficient, where things will work, where people will get involved in governing themselves, where there will be a transparency. एक utopia, एक सपना है. So I think if we start with these ideals and by using certain mechanism that is at our disposal today, mainly information technology, which has made our lives easy in quite a few ways, then this is an attempt at making our cities work more efficiently using some of the known techniques. There is no magic bullet, or there is nothing. I mean, we should not raise our expectations to such an extent that tomorrow everything will be okay. This is a transformation that we are planning to bring about in our cities that have existed. Hemant ji talked about, traffic की समस्या है, flooding की problem है, corruption है, बीसियों problems है.
Right.
तो उन problems को धीरे धीरे करके solve करना है और फिर cities ऐसी बनानी है कि जिसमें रहना एक pleasure हो जाए. It should be a pleasure. It should enhance the quality of living. And this is the idea. This is a very noble idea behind the concept of smart cities. How far we will go, we will wait and watch.
Okay. Professor Kundu, what do you have to say about the concept of smart cities?
Amandra, let me begin by sharing the concern that Professor Ravindra has raised about the lack of clarity with regard to the concept and the roadmap to smart cities. There are different stakeholders, different pressure groups who have emphasized different aspects. NASSCOM talk about technology. Smart city is a matter of technology. There are environmentalists who say sustainability is the major concern. The urban planners talk about providing high quality services at a high level of efficiency. And the civil society talk about participatory decision making through a networking, digital technology and all that. But I was looking at a document which said basically smart cities means whether they can attract the investors, private investment, other things will follow. Now the point is, the moment somebody asks a question that would the smart cities be exclusionary, how the non-smart people in the smart cities would have access to these high quality services, immediately the enthusiasts would like to shut down all those criticisms by saying yes, everything is included. Now my concern is, if smart cities means they have all the good things are imposed on that concept, it becomes a non-starter. It doesn't become a strategy of intervention. It doesn't become a mechanism which can be taken up in the 12th five-year plan. If you want to make smart cities as a concept which is operational, you have to say this is what it would do, this is what this would not do. This much money is required, then the funds will come from which sector? What would be the net effect on the overall urban structure? All that I think has to be worked out in order to really make it an operational strategy.
Okay, but Professor Ravindran, that's a very pertinent point Professor Kundu has raised over the question of inclusiveness. A smart city, all right, but who is it livable for? Are we going to accommodate the poor in this scheme of things?
Well, if you look at the profile of the Indian city, it is far from an industrial estate. It is far from an IT estate, which is actually peopled only by smart people and smart systems. And the normal tendency is to project the idea of the smart city towards a smart industrial settlement or a smart IT settlement. Now, an Indian city is far from that. If you look at the demographic profile of an Indian city, it has a whole range of people, from very young children to the oldest possible people in the city. You have lots of different layers of economic groups, lots of different types of livelihoods, and in other words, in every aspect, it's a very diverse profile. Now, when you want to call something a city in India, that diversity is an essential characteristic. So if we neglect that diversity and move towards some kind of a quote unquote smartness, which only excludes smart people and smart systems, then we fail to create cities. So this is a fundamental thing to remember. And along with it comes the fact that historically we have never seen this kind of growth of population, this size of urban centers. Historically we have not seen them. So the traditional systems of governance and delivery, service delivery, that we have been trying all these days have actually miserably failed. The municipalities or the local bodies or the local governments are unable to deliver what they should be delivering properly.
Right.
One reason is the humongous size of the cities.
Right.
So in order to circumvent this, the first thing that needs to be done is to smarten up governance.
Okay.
If we can smarten up governance, 50% of the problem of the existing city will vanish. And then all that you have to do is to look at new growth areas and new growth patterns and diversification of the economic base through new technology-driven systems. So I would say that the first priority in operationalizing this system, the first focus area should be governance. And if you look at the current condition of our local governance and the local delivery systems, they don't have the capacity to deliver, nor do they have the capacity to absorb this kind of money into their system.
Right.
So when this kind of huge sums of money are pumped into the system, obviously there will be lots of people who are interested in sharing the money. So, and the least equipped to protect public interest in that is our local government.
Right.
Unless we can convert that private profit motive into public good, we fail in governance. So that potential for private profit really goes up by this, and therefore we have to match that with efficiency in converting private profit into public profit. In other words, the local governments have to be strengthened to be able to match the competencies of the corporate sector.
Okay.
Now, so that training and that putting in place capacities at the local level, in my opinion, is the first step that needs to be done in creating a smart city.
Okay, but do we have the capacity to grapple with the concept of a smart city?
Yeah, of course we do, because if you look at the kind of human resources that we have in India, it's an enormous amount of human resource that we have. We have huge numbers of universities, educational systems. We have lots of places where this discourse can be located. So when you convert government projects into a practical thing in the ground, you require to develop that middle range of discourse involving institutions, intellectuals, and people from the industry and so on. And that discourse must lead to areas of action.
Right.
So that is the gap that needs to be filled.
Okay.
We certainly have the capacity in India, because if anybody is smart, the Indian mind is smart.
Right.
In any which way you look at it.
Professor Kundu, I'll continue with you. You wanted to make a point earlier?
Amandra, you asked whether within the country we have the capacity to deal with these complexities of this smart city. I entirely agree with Dr. Ravindran that we do have that capacity. But I would just like to share with you whether the process which has come out in the public domain in the last couple of weeks, does it really allow this capacity to be utilized? I will tell you, Ministry of Urban Development has invited proposals from different states, different cities, which will be prepared by private consultants. Some guidelines is given. The cities will not be selected on the basis of a macroeconomic framework of 6%, 7% growth rate which is being talked about, but through a competition. Now, the competition would be organized by the, Bloomberg philanthropies.
Right.
They have also mentioned some indicators. EU, European Union, large number of countries have shown interest because obviously smart cities is a business proposition. They have given the template also, right? We have a large number of private companies which are showing interest in different cities. We know, I was reading in the media that the French would like to know whether Indians want French smart cities or American smart cities. I just would like to know that in this competitive framework, the concern of providing water supply, sewerage, sanitation, making the cities inclusive and achieving a growth rate of 6 to 7%, which has been projected by Asian Development Bank, and World Bank also thinks that Asian economic growth rate would be much higher than the average growth rate of the world economy, which will be less than 3%. Now, for achieving that kind of a macro perspective, we do need urban centers to be inclusive. There's a key assumption of the Asian Development Bank's assumption. Now, are we able to address those macro level concerns for national economic and sustainable development when you allow this kind of a competitive bidding by private companies coming from left, right and center to really determine these cities? Because cities are getting determined in a way in an ad hoc manner. We already know 3 cities are taken up by US, 2 in French, by the French system, and there are other countries. So I just thought that this should be an issue with the policymakers, that how do you really bring in the macroeconomic considerations into our smart cities concept. Smart cities are not those which are only providing high quality services to the people. Cities have a responsibility towards the national economy as engines of growth.
Okay, Professor Kapadia, smart cities we understand will be selected through competition, and the final selection will be made through a process of elimination. Could you elaborate on what is the the selection process all about?
I think we have to be very aware of the fact that a city is a living mechanism. It is not a computer or it's not a machine part. Unfortunately, this whole business of smart cities is driving the city towards a finished product which is a machine product. It is the kind of a image that is being projected is that things will be so streamlined that a smart city anywhere in the world would be the same. And this is what unfortunately some of the modern development has been pushing us towards. Now India, with all our limitations, our cities, the chaotic cities, the mad cities that we live in, there is a certain amount of vibrance there. When we took up when the Prime Minister took up the problem of cleaning up Varanasi, we know Banaras is a very chaotic city, very dirty, filthy, and yet there is a certain electrical feel in the air there, and that comes out of the Indian ambience, which comprises of the chaoticness that is a part and parcel of the Indian life. Okay, now it has gone beyond a point, and we need to control that. And smart city is one of the tools that we have chosen to bring that chaos under control.
Right.
But I think this whole business of the resilience of the Indian city, the inclusiveness, the capacity for anybody to pack his bag and go anywhere and settle and start his life all over again.
Right.
And there is a surrogate group that supports him grow, and there is an economy that grows within the city. I think these are the kind of things that we do not have to lose sight of. And the way we are going to proceed about the selection process of a smart city, maybe we'll tick off a few boxes and then we'll say this is a smart city, this is not a smart city. So I feel that this whole concept of smart city is not a standalone concept.
Okay.
It should not work as a standalone concept, because if today Banaras or Kyoto or any other city, Jerusalem, these cities have been historical there for thousands of years.
Okay.
So the end result of a city is actually what has gone into it over a long period of time. So I feel that a smart city should be a surrogate to an existing city. And over a period of time,
Okay.
through the mechanisms that we have available with us, we should be able to gradually resolve
Okay.
the problems of the chaotic Indian city.
Okay, but we do not yet know if new cities or new smart cities will come up, or already existing cities will be upgraded.
No, I think we should start by upgrading our existing
Okay.
cities. That is my argument. Rather than
Okay.
jump at, investing a huge amount of money. Of course, the good news is that, so much of money spent will generate some jobs somewhere.
Okay.
But then that is not an end in itself.
But most of the 100 smart cities would be brownfield cities that will be redeveloped and retrofitting. Only a few will be greenfield.
Greenfield cities, right.
And those few which are coming up, they do raise this very critical issue. Are these for the poor people?
Absolutely.
I mean, can a common man afford
Okay,
this?
so accommodating the poor, Mr. Bishnoi, it's very important, because we have slums in all our cities. We are dependent on the poor for our daily needs. Where do they go? Do we have some kind of EWS housing scheme or something to that effect in place in the smart city
निश्चित
scheme?
तौर पर, क्योंकि दिल्ली का स्लम विभाग भी कहता है कि दिल्ली में एक आदमी रहने के लिए आता है तो उसके साथ उसके सहायक के तौर पर कम से कम 10 लोगों के और लोग आते हैं जो उसको सेवा देते हैं.
Right.
तो इस तरह की किसी भी सिटी को बसाने के लिए उसमें जो उन शहर के लोगों की सेवा करने के लिए जो लोग रहेंगे उनको बसाने की भी आवश्यकता रहेगी. ये जो सिटीज बनाने का विषय है ये शहर से बाहर बनेंगे, अभी बने हैं. ऐसा नहीं कि शहर के बाहर बड़े कॉलोनी नहीं बने. दिल्ली में भी आप देखिए जनकपुरी पूरा अलग एक इलाका है. अब द्वारका उसके बाद बसा है, वो भी अलग इलाका है. लेकिन उसी के कंपैरिजन में यदि आप उत्तर प्रदेश में जाएं तो वहां पर सुविधाएं बहुत कम है. वहां पर लोग इसलिए रहना नहीं चाहते कि बिजली की समस्या है, वहां पर पानी की समस्या है, और उन समस्याओं को हल करने में काफी लंबा समय लगा है. इसके विपरीत चंडीगढ़ बसा है तो चंडीगढ़ बहुत अच्छे ढंग से बसा, समय से बसा, और उसको पूरा शहर को का कॉन्सेप्ट जिसमें पानी की सप्लाई और बाकी सब चीजों को लेकर एक अच्छा शहर बसाया गया और लोग उसमें रहने के लिए बड़ी संख्या में गए और आज आनंद पूर्वक रह रहे हैं. तो इस तरह के शहरों को बसाया जा सकता है. अन्यथा शहरों की आबादी बढ़ेगी तो उसमें स्लम से विकसित होंगे और कुछ नहीं.
Professor Ravindra, the chaos that our cities are today, we see lack of planning, we see there's a lot of traffic, the problem of pollution, our cities are bursting at the seams. Given all of these challenges, what would you think would be a better proposal to upgrade the already existing cities, or have greenfield cities, new smart cities come up?
I think we need to tackle both these simultaneously. Because India's urbanization problem is so huge that we need to tackle the issue from various directions simultaneously. It can't be just a unilinear program through which we'll solve all problems. So I would say that there are some cities which are already underway, and we also have the example of the SEZs which have failed. SEZs were also in a way they had the potential to be smart cities, standalone smart cities, but they have failed to take off for various reasons. And anyway, I don't want to go into those details, but it's important that we look at applying the smart concept to existing cities, most critically, because our cities are not delivering the quality of life which we are supposed to deliver. If you look at the competition that has been floated, in which the cities have to prove worthy of deserving the aid that will be given to them by the center. But we should not forget that in India, urbanization is a state subject and not a central subject.
Right.
So central government can provide inducement, and it's the state governments which have to actually operationalize the things on the ground. And now after the 74th Amendment, more than this, the state government is a local elected local body which has to be in the forefront of delivery. So we need to look at the capacity at all these different levels, whether they have the ability to deliver or not, and each state will react differently to these offers. And they have the right to do so in the democratic process because it's a federal system. And as far as the smart systems that we introduce actually strengthens the democratic process, it will be a successful thing in the long run. It will be sustainable. If it does not sustain the democratic process, or on the other hand, inversely, if they are supporting those larger investment network which actually always try to sabotage the democratic process and create exclusive domains within the city. If that is the process that we unleash, then it is not sustainable. So the sustainability is very closely linked with our democratic process. That is why I was even initially saying that a participatory method that actually generates from the ground upwards the problems and projects the problems from ground upwards, that is most critical in the case of the smart city. And in this competition that's being given out, there is a requirement for these cities to fill up a number of forms. And I can tell you from experience of the JNNURM cities that they don't even know how to fill up forms. They don't know how to intelligently read the columns and where to put what information. That's one thing, to put the information. In many cases, the information does not exist. They don't have the data. They don't know how many running kilometers of roads they have, or how many running kilometers of sewage systems or water supply they have. They don't know how much of garbage is collected. So they either send fudged information or they don't have the information. So this information gap is a very big problem in our cities. That's why, as part of strengthening the governance mechanism, should be the ability of these local government structures to collect information and utilize them. That's one of the training that requires to be given, and that does not exist around. In the case of JNNURM, I was part of a committee or a group of people who looked at performance indicators for JNNURM cities. 60 odd cities had sent in theirs, but many of the forms were incomplete because they could not fill it. And it never gave us a proper comparison between performance of city A to city B and city C. Because if you look at Chandigarh, he gave the example of Chandigarh. Chandigarh was on top of the line as the best performing city because it is a small planned city, and it has very well maintained services, and it has a population which is more or less middle class population. All the poor who would have otherwise normally lived in Chandigarh are externed from the city, just like the Greek city-states, where all the slaves were surrounding this very democratic, well-planned cities in the middle. In a similar fashion, Chandigarh has all its poor externed outside. And the only way it can grow is by creating more cities like Mohali and various others. So it was not really a good example to see how performance of a city is measured, because it does not have the complexity.
So how do we get past this hurdle is something we'll discuss in greater detail in just a bit. We have to take a break in the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back.